This is 7th grade activity 4.3. In this activity, students will use the percent equation to find discounts and markups of items. The standards covered in this lesson are 7RP3 and 7EE2 and 3. The page numbers out of the hardcover book are pages 172 out of through 177 and pages 97 through 100 in your practice journal. Today we're going to be using your practice journal. So before we get started with that, we want to go ahead and review some previously learned concepts that are going to help us with this lesson. First of all, back in lesson 2, we worked with increases and decreases. So we need to review really quickly what the word increase means. Well, whenever we work with increased, so a number increased by a certain percentage, our first step, probably to make it the easiest, is to go ahead and work off of increasing our percentage. So we always start out with 100%, and if it increases 70%, we would add 100% to that. Understanding this concept is actually going to help us with this next section because we're going to be working with discounts and markups. So this would be an example of a markup. If it increased, that's how much we would mark up. Okay, markups are going to take place in the business industry. Maybe when somebody buys something, a store buys something, and then they sell it to customers, they do a markup. So they increase what they sell it for. So here, now we would work off of, like we did in lesson 2, 40 times 170% is our new percentage. So we always worked with 1.70, okay, or 1.7. If I wanted to go through and actually solve that, 40 times 1.7 would give me 68. Now, that's not the only method. You could also go through and actually find 70% of 40 and then add that to the original. I think working off of the percentages is going to help you with today's lesson. So that's why I introduced it to you that way back in section 2. So here, 50 decreased by 35%. So in section 2, we worked with decreased. We subtracted from 100% because we always start out with that original number which is 100%. So if we subtract, here we added so decreased would be to subtract. Our new percentage would be 65%. And we would take that times 50 because we want to figure out 65% of 50. So this we would punch in as 0.65 on our calculator. And when we do that, we get 32.5. Okay, once again, that is not the only method that we could have used to solve that. We could have also figured out 35% of 50 and then subtracted that answer from 50, okay? But understanding that when we increase, we're going to be adding at some point, and when we decrease, we're going to be subtracting, okay? Another concept that's also going to help us that some of you may feel more comfortable with is working proportions. So this was back from chapter 3. We worked with proportions. So when we solved proportions, we could either say, what did they do to the front number to get the back number, or we could use that cross multiply divide. So we multiply where we have two numbers diagonal and then divide by the third. So 96 times 100 would give us 9,600. And then we would divide that by 60. And when we do that, we find out that x equals 160. Okay, so this is something that we can actually use because really 60, I could have been actually working with 60%. So maybe 60% of a number, that might have been maybe we were going through and getting a 40% discount. Okay, so that's something that we're going to be working with today. So understanding each of those concepts will help us with today's lesson or activity. Okay, so let's go ahead and slide that off to the side. So we're going to be working out of your practice journal. Page 97 is where we'll start. So on page 97 of your practice journal, you have something that looks like this. And of course, I will scroll down as I move down the page. But it says work with a partner. So today you actually will be working with a partner. It says the same pair of sneakers is on sale at 3 stores. Which one is the best buy? So we've got a pair of sneakers for $45. They're giving us the regular price, but you get 40% off. At another store, store B, they're a $49 pair of shoe at regular price, but you get 50% off. And then at store C, their regular price is $39, but you're going to get up to 70% off. Okay, so for A, B, and C, you'll notice down here, they went ahead and kind of split the original cost. So A, remember our full cost was $45, and they've taken and actually split that up into 10 groups. There's actually 10 blocks here. Okay, so we could go through and figure out that each block, if we divided that 45 by 10, is worth $4.50, each and every block. Okay, so this is just kind of giving you a visual representation. So if I got 40% off, that would be like 4 boxes. So 40%, each of these is worth 10%. Okay, if I got 40% off, I would take 4 of these boxes off. And I end up with a $27 pair of shoes. Okay, another method that we could use that hopefully you'll, because I don't think there's going to be too many of you that when you go to do this on your own, is going to want to actually draw boxes and split them up into 10 and then go through and, you know, mark every few of them with how much each of those boxes is worth. Another method is, well, when we got 40% off, that was like a discount or a decrease. So if it decreased by 40%, that means I was working off of 60% of times the $45, the original cost. Okay, if we go through and actually do that, 0.6 times 45 still puts us at that $27. Okay, once again, this is more visual. This is solving it as an equation. Another method is understanding also that you could go through and if you're not very good with the concept of understanding that I'm going to have to multiply, you could set it up as a proportion, but you have to use some inferred information, okay? I still am going to have to understand the decrease part, and I've got 60% that I'm going to pay, over 100% always, and the $45 was the original 100%. So I could also set it up as a proportion, cross, multiply, divide. I have to decide for me, is it easier to see it visually? This will take time to do if you're working on your own and don't already have the diagram set up for you. This is what we worked with in section 2, but this is even more visual for some of you. So you kind of have to decide for yourself as a student, what do you need? Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the next one. This one was a 50% off. Now 50% off is pretty easy to do. Most of you can probably understand. I'm just gonna divide it by 2. But if I go through and mark off 50%, each of these, let's see, $49 divided by 10 is gonna give me $4.90 per box. And these were each 10%. So if I take off 50, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. Okay, I'm landing in the middle here. So I'm going to have to either add $4.90 to this $19.60 or subtract it from the $29.40. And that gives me $24.50. Okay, so far this store has got the better buy of the 2 that I've checked. Okay, the other method is I could have figured out 50% or 0.5 of $49. Or I could have set it up as a ratio, 50% over 100%, because it's always going to be over 100%. And when I was paying full price, it was $49 was the same as the 100%, cross multiply divide. Either way, we still are going to get our $24.50. I'm going to mark these really quick with our answers. Okay, so you're going to go through and actually do the third one on your own, letter C on your own. You can do any of the 3 steps that you would prefer. If you want to use the little diagram that they gave you, you can go through and figure out how much it was per thing. And you do that by just taking the total cost divided by 10 because there were 10 boxes. Okay, or you can set it up like we did, understanding though that you're working with 70% off, so decreased 70%. Okay, so you're going to have to do that initial step of subtracting off. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and finish this up, and then you'll check your answers with my answer key when you're finished. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and look at activity 2. Okay, so you can go ahead and pause your video and finish activity 1, just so that I'm not getting ahead of you and then you're forgetting what we've already worked on. Okay, So activity 2 says finding the original price. So this is a little different. Before we were finding out what the new price was when we had a decrease. And now we're finding out what the original price was. So it says work with a partner. You buy a shirt that is on sale for 30% off. You pay $22.40. Your friend wants to know what was the original price of that shirt. How can your friend find the original price? Okay, this is where I visually love the proportions, but they do give us a little diagram here. So we could go through and actually figure out, based off of this information, okay, that if you paid $22.40, what every box was worth. Well, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 boxes. So you could take $22.40 and divide that by 7 to see that each box was worth 3.2 or $3.20. You could then work off by adding $3.20 to each of those. Now, for me, that's time consuming. So I love, for this one, the proportion setup. Okay, so if I got 30% off, that means it decreased, the original price decreased 30%, right? So that means that if it was 30% off, I paid 70%. So 70% of the full cost was 100%. Now, when you're working off of a proportion and you're using proportion or percents, when you punch them in on your calculator, you don't have to do the 0.7. You can leave it as just 70. Okay, so then here's where it gets tricky. My $22.40, that was my sale price, right? So my sale price is on the top. That's where my discounted amount was. Now I can cross multiply, divide. So if I do 22.40 times 100 and then divide that by 70, it gives me $32. Okay, if I had continued in the fashion that I did, well, each box was worth $3.20 and I had 10 boxes, so we could take that times 10. But I had to get that $3.20 by working off of these 7 boxes made $22.40. Okay, but once again, you're not always going to want to take the time to draw a diagram. Here's another visual representation that you could use. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to activity 3. So that's working with finding an original price. Or we could have worked off of, another thing was $22.40 is 70% of what number, if you like to set it up that way, but I know a lot of kids struggle with that wording. Okay, so activity 3, this is on pages 98 and 99. Oops. It says you own a small jewelry store, you increase the price of jewelry by 125%. So this is where we're going to be working off of a markup. Eventually they'll start calling this a markup. So we increased by 125%. So you're going to pay the 100% and then you're going to increase it another 125. So we're going to add our 100 to that, which means it's 225%. Okay. So it says work with a partner, use a model to estimate the selling price of jewelry, then use a calculator to find the selling price. So what they've done is they went ahead and once again, they split this up and they said that our cost, your cost was $250. So our jewelry store, the cost for us was $250. If we mark it up 125%, how much are we going to sell it for? So they want us to find that end price, what I'm going to ask a customer to pay for that. So there's a couple different ways I could go through and figure out what each box is worth. So I know that they're $250 for these 4 boxes. So if I took $250 and divided that by 4, I could find out what each box was worth. And that's $62.50. Okay, now I have 10 boxes, so I could take that answer times 10 if I wanted to. So that's one method, which is going to give me $625. Okay, the other method is I could go revert back to what I learned in section 2, and I can go ahead and set it up as my increase. So I increased 125%, so it was 2.25% of times 250. Okay, that should give us the same answer. And when I punch it in on my calculator, 2.25 times $250. Gives me $562.50. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Aha, I see what I did. What did I do? I just assumed that there were 10 boxes like there were previously, and there weren't. This should have been times 9. Good thing I had another method of checking it. So 6250 times 9 gives me 562.50, which is what I actually also had set up. Or when I went through and I calculated this one out on my calculator, this is what I was getting. Okay, so that's another method. The third method is to go through and you can set it up as a proportion. Okay, so you could set it up as 225% over the 100%. And I know you're used to having the larger number on bottom, but the 100%, the original percent or amount was 250. And you can cross multiply, divide. It's still going to get us to that $562.50. This method of the diagram, kind of hard to set up on your own. One of these two methods would probably be a better choice as we start to move on. But this is kind of giving you that visual representation. So what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and finish out the last two on page 99, and that it's, once again, your cost. So that's how much it's going to cost the jewelry store, and they want you to find that end price. And you can use any of those three methods, whatever method you're comfortable with, okay? And then I want you to go ahead and answer number 4 on page 99. So that's it for the activity. Good luck with this, and just remember there's numerous ways. Sometimes we need that visual when we're first starting out, but we can use previously learned knowledge to also go through. We could set it up as with that increase, decrease, or we could set it up as proportions once we've done that increase, decrease. Good luck with this.